The biggest hurdle in automation activities is to get the investment approval. And that's why I'm very happy to welcome a special guest today who has the solution for it.
Automation Awakenings, your weekly dose of best practices for logistics automation.
Yes, welcome to the next episode of the Automation Awakenings podcast. And today, again, a very special episode because I have a guest here in our studio. And I can imagine that many of you are struggling in getting their automation investments approved. And he actually has a great solution for that. So I welcome Mr. Marco Lamela to our show. He's the international key account manager at CHG Meridian. So, Marco, welcome.
Ollie, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great that you are here with us today. And we love to dive directly into the topic. So, imagine there is a logistics engineer, very motivated. He found some very good mobile robots and he would like to implement them. And now he sees, okay, the costs are, I don't know, 400, 500,000 euros. And he already has a stomach ache when thinking about going to his manager and asking for that budget. What would you tell him? What would be your recommendation?
Yeah, this is a very common topic we face and see every day with our clients. So I hope that he has done his job properly before with selecting a supplier and all these things connected technically, operationally, etc. And when it comes down to financing, as we are at CHG, we are working on the leasing part. It always, in our mindset, makes sense to lease mobile robots for certain reasons, and there's a lot of reasons to lease mobile robots, right? From budget to the technical part, second life cycle, sustainability thinking with that. So there's a lot of things connected in doing so, but especially to your question, what would I recommend him to do is ask for a lease, split down the costs at a certain time of amount, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe 6 years, to bring down the monthly cost, right? And to improve the ROI as well. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the benefits in leasing mobile robots is you improve the ROI dramatically because there's no upfront cash invest you need to do. So there's no need to ask your boss for 400K invest immediately. It always is way better also economically to say, hey, it's just 2,000 euros a month. Just to give an example, it's not the right number, but just to give you an idea, what does it mean? And I would say it's not only the invest, it's also the budget approval, which might make your life operationally easier or administratively easier, especially when it comes to budget approvals internally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Marco, that sounds like magic. Yeah. So instead of paying 400,000 K, sure, these numbers are invented, but doesn't matter. You can just pay 2K a month. But is it really that simple? And how is the ROI improved by this financing model?
Yeah, yes, it is simple. It's no magic. It's reality. It's not uncommon. And I always like to bring examples where it's similar. And a good example is always forklifts. Forklifts are being leased for ages for a reason. Because it makes sense, technically, economically, operationally, and from an administrative point of view. And exactly the same is with mobile robots, right? A lot of people cannot really imagine why, but in my view, I see that mobile robots follow the forklifts somehow in the intralogistics business. Yeah?
Okay.
So, I mean, one of the targets is to replace forklifts, right? At least to replace, in an ideal world, forklift driver, which is one of the key drivers of the ROI, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to the economically part, why does the ROI improve, right? Is exactly what I said. With a monthly cost, no upfront cash invest, it brings down your ROI in an ideal world to day one. Yeah? It sounds like magic.
Yeah.
If you put the numbers down, it is magic. So people are surprised when they see the numbers, how they come down. Yeah? But the answer is very simple. If you have an average return on invest for mobile robots, something between 2 and 3 years, if you split the cost into 5 years, the budget is always beneficial, right? From a pure logic point of view. And if you then add also that you can implement down payments, some suppliers or a lot of suppliers ask for down payments. What does it mean? You have to pay the first amount of money when you order a mobile robot, when it gets delivered, and when it gets implemented. Most companies in the world hate cash upfront for nothing.
Yeah, sure.
At this stage. And this is exactly where leasing kicks in and say, we take up the down payment, so there's no cash out for the company, which is the first step of improvement of ROI.
Okay.
The second step is then over the term, as you pay a monthly rate or quarterly rate, it improves even further. If you then add a payment term on top of that, it even further improves. So in a typical scenario, the first euro being paid or dollar being paid is when your whole project is operational. This means you make the money, you save the money, and you pay for it typically slightly later because of the payment term, which then gives you an economical benefit of doing so. And I hope it's very transparent and easy to understand that you improve the whole project ROI with that.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, and this is the reason what we observe, and especially as we were quite global, companies are getting surprised when we say, hey, leasing of mobile robots is no rocket science. It's possible because it makes sense at every stage. And so they're very surprised and excited to say, wow, that's possible. And yes, it brings down my ROI. Perfect. There's no CapEx budget approval. So this is an operational part. I'd say, and we've experienced this with a lot of companies saying, hey, Marco, it takes so long to get a budget approved, to make the CapEx paperwork done. So in many companies, it's also easier to ask for an OPEX instead of a CapEx, right? It does not have perfectly anything to do with leasing. It's more the internal processes, works, requirements, which is a nice benefit by the side to use it.
Okay, now I understood that part. Now I'm thinking again about our logistics engineer. Yeah, he has this offer 400K, but now how can he lease it? I mean, one option would be to ask the supplier, right? If they have the option to pay monthly. But now there is the option to use CHG for that as a third party company in this context.
Yeah.
And how do I switch now from buying to leasing with CHG.
Yeah.
What do I need to do?
Yeah. So this is perfectly right. CG is a third-party company, which is manufacturer independent. Nevertheless, is most or a lot of manufacturers of mobile robots are rather small companies. So I would say something between 10 and 200 employees. So this is a rather small size. So it's not perfect for them to offer an own leasing model or an own rental model. This is where CG comes in and takes a pain of the OEM and a pain of the customer. So as a logistics engineer, if you have the option, you can ask the manufacturer who maybe has an own rental solution, or they might recommend third-party leasing companies. Or you go to your purchasing and ask your purchasing, hey, where can I, or who's our preferred leasing partner to lease mobile robots? The reality is there's not that much companies out there who want mobile robots. The reason is rather simple, because it's a very new technology, I would say, or it is a technology that develops quite quick at the moment. So there's not a super big appetite of companies who want mobile robots, especially if they are being returned in 3, 4, 5, 6 years. What shall the company do with the mobile robot? With the company, I mean the leasing company who owns the mobile robot. And you need a company who has the creativity and the remarketing resources of selling a mobile robot secondhand afterwards. So this is kind of the key, because this is the benefit for the customer to even improve the metrics even further. So bottom line, go to purchasing, ask a supplier, or immediately ask your leasing company if they are able to provide an offer for this specific manufacturer, use case, country. What people often forget is leasing is a regulated finance product, which means you need to be regulated. So it's not easy to get a company in every country of the world, right? So if we're in the middle of Africa, it's getting very difficult. In the more developed country, it's rather easy, and this is where the differences come from a leasing perspective, to be able to provide customers across the board, across the project, across the manufacturer solutions. Right?
When thinking about now these countries, you said Africa might be a problem, but is it like possible in only a few countries, or where can I lease now?
Rather typical is all across Europe, Americas, Asia, India. It really comes down to, most of the companies, they have a footprint very similar to the industry. And especially as we are German companies, we typically follow an automotive footprint, right? So obviously the largest client base is automotive. So we followed at least a lot of automotive countries. So I would say most of the countries, unless it's super, super low-cost countries, it's getting difficult. And with low-cost countries, I mean countries really like African countries, Ukrainian, these very super Eastern countries where it gets really, really difficult. Or technically, economically makes no sense. With this, I mean, an example is Turkey, with a lead interest rate of 50%. So it economically makes not perfectly sense to lease something where the interest rate is so super high, right? Because interest and leasing follows the interest rate guidelines as well.
So we understood where it's possible. And now, like really practical, how can I switch now this model? Would you get in contact with the supplier? The customer needs to do that, or how do I finally, get to this leasing model? And I'm paying CHG then, or the supplier? Yeah, how
yeah.
is this working?
So technically, it's a three-party arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
It's the customer, it's a supplier, and the leasing company. So these three parties needs to work together. Why? It's very simple. The manufacturer is going to sell it to the leasing company, and the leasing company is leasing it to the customer, to the end user. Technically, it's all similar to the buy.
Mm-hmm.
You define your project with the OEM. You define all the specification, all the purchase prices, service prices. Yeah?
Okay.
So what a lot of people do not know, that you can integrate services as well, right? Delivery, commissioning, project management. You can include this into the lease as well, which is a rather important topic to understand. You can lease hardware plus a certain amount of soft costs, I would say.
Okay.
So you negotiate with the OEM, you finally agree on it. Once you agreed, it technically goes very easy. You issue a purchase order, either to the OEM or to the leasing company directly, and then the leasing company to the OEM. If you go direct, we take over your direct order and we replace the invoice address, more or less.
Okay.
In easy words. So actually, not a big difference. You just need to let the OEM know that you're gonna exchange, that you're not gonna pay yourself. Please send the invoice to CHG or any other leasing company who's willing to do it.
Okay. Sounds easy, actually. No magic.
No
actually.
magic. It's not a magical thing. It's very common to lease a different certain assets, as we say.
Yeah.
And especially as forklift leasing is around for ages.
Yeah.
Pretty much every company knows how it works, especially the large corporations, right? The large ones. So typically, latest the purchasing teams should know how it works and what they need to do. But again, technically, no rocket science. Issue the purchase order. Tell CHG, you better discuss with the leasing company before to get an approval for it, right?
Yeah.
So the leasing companies, they need to approve it because they need to check the credit profiles, etc.
Yeah. Sure.
In an ideal world, you have kind of a credit line in place. If it's a one-off project, it needs individual credit check, and hopefully, if your credit is good, you get it approved, and then you're ready to go. And then technically, you wait until you get invoiced, right? Down payments.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no down payment, you wait until delivery. You do commissioning. Once commissioned, installed, and accepted.
Okay.
Important.
After I signed, right?
After you signed as a customer, you're fully happy and satisfied.
Okay.
This
cool.
is the time where we say we're going to pay the invoice to the supplier, the final invoice. And this is the time where then the payment starts back. Important, at the time the project is accepted, operational, up and running. So very important. No cash out before.
Okay. That's a big advantage, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any parameters I have to consider? I mean, the first thing which comes into my mind is the period. How long should I lease? A couple of years or months? So what is possible?
Yeah. There are some certain limitations from the regulatory perspective and the guidelines from a tax perspective we have.
Okay.
But also country by country. Again, we are leasing is a regulated product, if you want so, who follows tax guidelines in each country, which might be different. But all across the countries, I would say bottom line, a typical leasing period is 3 to 5 years, sometimes up to 6, but no longer. Especially, we often get the question that customer says, hey, I'm going to use it for 10, 12 years. Can
Yeah.
I lease it for this period? Technically, yes. I would never recommend to do it because I'm convinced, and this is what we saw in the last years, technology is improving so quickly. Software, hardware, customers change, processes change, equipment does not fit anymore. They relocate, they close operations. So there's a lot of movement out there. What could happen? And the reality is people typically tend to believe they use it longer than they really use it. And this is exactly the case here, since there's no decades of experience in mobile robots. People tend to believe it's longer, but in reality, 3 to 5 years, also depending on the product, right? On the OEM. Yeah.
So 3 to 5 years. What happens if, let's say, I sign this leasing contract for 5 years, and after 3 years, I see there's a new model available of this mobile robot? Can I just upgrade, or is this not possible?
Yeah, good question. Nothing untypical. So, first of all, it is a fixed term, which, like in the credit world, you sign up for 3, 4, 5 years. But since leasing is a little bit more flexible as a credit, we can talk.
Okay.
So technically, upgrades is possible as long as it technically works out with the OEM. So nothing uncommon. OEMs upgrade, I mean, software upgrade is a rather easy one, but a hardware upgrade is a little bit more complicated. Possible. You can also take these costs and say, hey, the upgrade costs, I say something, 5,000 euros. You can implement the additional 5,000 into the lease as well and stretch again until the remaining end of term.
Okay.
Or if the upgrade is so significant that you say, I'm going to use it from this time for another 5 years, you can also extend the term accordingly and then see where the new budget goes, right? Typically, I would say it drops, but it depends on the amount of additional investment you put in. This is to make it very comfortable for the customer and users to have no additional investment, no additional capex, no additional formulas, right? So hopefully to make it rather simple for the customer to take the pain, make it easy, and get it done, right? There's nothing more painful than waiting until you get approval to place the order, to get equipment delivered, to get equipment and upgrades installed, commissioned again, etc., etc. So we try in our world to make it as easy as possible for the end user.
Okay. Now, when I hear leasing, I always think about car leasing, passenger car leasing. So I have my BMW or Mercedes. I'm paying the leasing fee every month, and then there's this important milestone when I have to give the car back, and usually they check this car very exactly and find a lot of scratches, and then the final invoice is usually pretty high. So is it similar with the mobile robot? So will you check how the mobile robots is looking like, or do we have to pay at the end probably a lot of money, or what happens when the leasing contract ends?
Typically the main difference is so technically, yes, it's kind of same, but the big difference is in the car leasing, it's a very emotional product that's being sold to private persons afterwards. And let's say they tend to be very picky. Every little scratch. Luckily, we are here in the B2B environment. It's an object that's being used in a production facility or logistic facility, so it will have scratches and typical usage of the equipment. So there won't be any bill unless it's significantly damaged, right? So if the product cannot be used in the
Okay.
second stage,
Yeah.
then yes, you need to repair it, or you return it in a stage that it needs to be repaired. And then exactly same as a forklift, it's going to be repaired, or you will get a certain deduct or an invoice for the deduction of the second-hand value we would face. So we just pass it on one-to-one. So the biggest issue and the biggest fear people have at the return is not a big fear in this case.
Okay.
Yeah. But I can perfectly understand the question, because typically you get big bills, especially in the car, and every scratch gets paid for it, or you need to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. But is there also the option to just continue leasing, or can I buy the device as well?
Sure. Technically, 3 options.
Okay.
First of all, you can return the equipment. Second, you can extend the equipment as long as you need it, right? So if you say, hey, I just want to use it for another 6 months or for another 12 months, talk to your lessor and you will find a solution to make that happen. And the third option, you can buy out the equipment. So if you have the feeling after this term that you're going to use it for another 10 years, you might want to buy it out,
Yeah.
which we could perfectly understand. So this is not an issue. This is possible. Technically, and I believe that most of the companies will return the equipment because technology changes so fast. And all these arguments I had before is what we see and what we experience at the moment, that what's going to happen, that companies decide to return, or let's say to replace the technology, right? Typically, you do not return and you do nothing. You implement a new technology that is maybe cheaper, quicker, safer, and all of these things. So it's a good life cycle, 5 years, to think about it. And if you then have the feeling technology did not develop that fast, okay, you go for another 6 months, 12 months and decide again. So you are very flexible in your decisions. And this keeps you as a company very flexible. And important, and this is a message to all the listeners out there, you need to structure your leasing contract in a way that this is possible. It's not possible with every company. So make sure you have these options. You're not bound to it. You are flexible and you can handle it, and you are in the driver's seat to decide what's going to happen.
Yeah. With this being said, and the ending of the leasing contract, unfortunately, our podcast episode also already comes to an end. And I hope, Marco, that you are available for further questions online on LinkedIn. So I'm sure that there are many questions open. I actually also had a couple of more questions there, like with which companies can I lease and so on. But let's keep that for the comment section on LinkedIn. So feel free to post your questions there. Marco is available.
I am.
Perfect. Yeah,
I'm
that's
happy,
great.
very, very happy to answer any question. Feel free to reach out. I'm sure there's more questions and more specifics. So very happy to answer and open for any discussion.
Yeah, Marco, thank you very much for that. Thank you for coming to our studio and for this very interesting deep dive into the leasing world of mobile robots. And I think, the audience outside, together with me, learned a lot today. So thanks again. And to the audience outside, hear you next Monday. Bye-bye.
This was another episode of the Automation Awakenings podcast. Visit us at automation-awakenings.com.